We're here to talk about marketing, and the track today is going to be sponsored by Reaktor. Right, and up first, we've got Matilda from Reaktor.
So my name is Matilda. Nice to meet all of you. I'm a brand strategist at Reaktor. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Gen Z, why they think everything is cringe, and how we can work to change that. So this is my sister. She was born on a very dreary spring day in Helsinki in 1997, as you can see from the bleached eyebrows and the pouty face, and maybe the birthday too, she belongs to Generation Z. The year she was born was quite remarkable in many ways. It's the year when IBM's Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov in chess. And it made us all wonder, if a computer could do this, what could it do next? But it wasn't all computers. It also gifted us Titanic, that took the world by storm and showed us what entertainment could be when we put millions of dollars into it. And we also got Dolly, which made us think, if we could clone a sheep, could we clone Leonardo DiCaprio next? So it's been 26 years, and the world has changed quite a bit. Instead of talking about the ethics of IBM's Deep Blue and Kasparov's recent defeat, we talk about the ethics of DALL-E, or Midjourney, or ChatGPT. Maybe we fear for our jobs. And instead of Titanic, we look at TikToks, we make them go viral. And instead of Dolly the sheep, maybe we were starting to rethink capitalism or how we reframe climate change. And somewhere along the way, Vera and other Gen Zers grew up. They grew into adults who are more connected than any of us in this room. They grew up into adults with spending money. But why should we really care? Well, speaking of spending money, Gen Zers that have entered the working force now have a purchasing power of $340 billion US. And that's set to grow as the youngest members of this generation enter the workforce. And when I talked about being connected, they're truly the first connected generation. They got their first mobile phones far before they got their first bank accounts or drove their first cars. And despite having a very short attention span that some claim is around 8 seconds, they consume mobile games. They play far more mobile games than their millennial siblings or their Gen X parents, and they do it very often. They like more variety, they're more likely to download new games. So you have all this spending power, you have all these connected people who are really eager to play games, but there's a little bit of a catch for all of us. Unfortunately for us, they think our brands, the marketing we create, and the advertising we create is rather cringe. Only around 8% of Gen Zers think that advertising they see resonates with them, and that brands really understand them and know how they think and feel and how they act. Moreover, over 78% of Gen Zers think that brands don't actually talk, they just talk the talk, they never walk the talk. So that's not really a great way to start building relationship with these Gen Zers who actually don't stay loyal to brands. They can shift like this all the time. And if we think about it, all of us here in this room, I'm looking around, we probably grew in an era of internet optimism. We thought that internet was going to connect all of us, was going to make everything special and great and creative. So it's our job to start really changing this. It's our job to start making sure that Generation Z keeps up with the things we create. And this will require us to do 3 things that will probably hurt a little bit or sting a little bit. The first thing is to rethink our brands, rethink the authority we claim in the space, rethink the ways in which we build these relationships and where we stand vis-a-vis our audiences. It requires us to really think about communities. What do they actually mean for us? How do we actually service them? And it requires us to really understand what we're building and what we're putting out into the world and start loving what we do. So, as I said, probably all of us, I'm making a generalization, but probably all of us grew up in an era of internet optimism. But when you look at Gen Z, they grew up in the age of Cambridge Analytica, or Facebook, or data privacy concerns, or global climate change, which means that they don't really trust what we tell them as brands. They look at what we produce with cynicism. They don't really look at the words and take them as they are, but they reflect them on their own life experiences. And as I said, they're very, very connected. So what this means is when we make a mistake as a brand, they can see it, they can spot it, and they can disseminate it. Take, for instance, American Airlines, that a couple years ago painted the wings of their aircraft in rainbow colors to support the LGBTQ+ community. What they hadn't taken into account, though, was that a year before, they'd actually donated millions of dollars into anti-LGBTQ+ efforts. But when Gen Z found out, they really put it on blast. So we can't really escape this thing. There is, however, something we can do, and it's start looking at Gen Z consumers as collaborators. Open up the way that we build brands, the way that we put out products, the way that we talk about them, and take Generation Z in. So really open up the process, show them what they have under the hood, and take them in as equal contributors. And if we think about how brands have been built traditionally, on the right-hand side, you see an authoritative brand model. What probably worked for us in the room and our parents was brands telling people how to act, what kind of culture to belong to, what to think, what to wear, what to eat. But this doesn't really work when Gen Z brings their $340 million into play. And that's when we need to start looking at brands as porous entities, as something that we invite people to look at and collaborate and poke holes through and really start building them together. So, how can we bring Vera and her Gen Z friends into the fold? Firstly, we need to invite them to actually collaborate, not just spectate at what we do. We need to use them as hands-on contributors and collaborators and acknowledge that. Use them as your focus group in a new way. And then when you do, give these contributors something to hold on to. Give them privileges and rights and really respect your community. And speaking of communities, it's not enough to just invite them in. We also need to nurture them. 8 in 10 Zoomers want to belong to a community. They're looking for communities. They've been dubbed the loneliest generation, ravaged by pandemics and wars and uncertainty. So they're really looking for something to latch onto. But if we think of the brand model, the authoritative brand model that dictates everything, that's not what they want. They actually want us to understand them. So instead of artificially trying to build these communities, telling them where to belong, we should start building these communities together, going to where they already exist, understanding what language they use, understand what kind of issues they're faced with, and then cater to their needs. So instead of consumers, we need to start looking at Zoomers as community members, people with things to offer, and be really curious about these cultures, be curious about these micro-communities. Go on Discord, go on TikTok, start thinking about what they truly need and offer that instead of just something to look at. So, don't offer Vera and her Gen Z friends something to belong to, but create it with them. Ask what kind of tools they need. Provide them with conversation material. Provide them with places where they can convene and commune. Make sure that you're somebody that offers them a place of respite, some place to find people who think alike. And because they're so connected, it's really easy. You can find somebody from Hanoi or Helsinki or Hong Kong and really bring them around your brand as long as you create it together with them. And lastly, when we talk about porous brands, or we talk about brands with authority, or we talk about brands with authenticity, Gen Z really wants that more than anybody. 6 in 10 Zoomers will actually advocate for your brand or buy into your brand if they feel like it really resonates with them and what they think. And they'll definitely know if you're faking it. Like I told you with the American Airlines example, they can find information, they're connected, they'll know when you mess up, they'll know when you make mistakes, and you need to own up to that too. So you should really embrace this niche that you're in, whatever you do, and find things that amplify that. So, instead of consumers, start looking at Gen Z as independent thinkers. more than any consumer group, more than millennials, more than Gen Xers. Like, they really look for material to corroborate whatever you're saying, whatever you're doing. So start really embracing that. And in all of this, we really like to reinvent the wheel quite often. We like to come up with new brand frameworks or user acquisition models, or we really try and find new ways to market things. Whereas what's really important is that you know what you stand for beyond making profit, beyond acquiring users. What kind of change are you willing to make in this world? And once you know that, it's really easy to communicate that to Zoomers, and they'll really believe it when you know what it is. So start by really going through your brand fundamentals. What does your brand stand for? What kind of world do you envision? What kind of mission are you on? And start communicating that in a way that Zoomers understand. Use their language, go to where they sit, where they play, where they meet each other, and offer them something concrete and something good. So, you've seen lots and lots of pictures of my little sister with bleached eyebrows. You've heard tons of little tidbits and facts and figures. But what I'd really like to leave you with is this very simple cheat sheet. It's only 3 little bits. Number 1 is to stop behaving like an authority. Stop thinking that you know what Gen Zers are thinking, or stop thinking that you know what they want, and start finding out for yourself. Then start really loving communities in a way that you haven't before. Start infiltrating Gen Z communities. Learn how they speak, learn their lingo, learn what they fear and what they hope for. And I think the most important one is to actually just be yourself. Know what you stand for. Know what you're selling. Know what you're doing beyond that selling that could actually change the world a little bit. Thank you.